Welcome back to the 49ers Live Look-ins, the very first 49ers Live Look-in of the 2020 season. I'm Keiana Martin, 49ers senior team reporter, and we are going to bring you guys live coverage of 49ers camp from right here at the SAP Performance Facility. But with that, every day we will have a special guest joining us, and we had to bring the 49ers radio color analyst, Tim Ryan, to be our very first guest on this season's Live Look-ins. Tim, this is a much different training camp than what we might have been used to in the past. First off, you and I, we've got our 6 feet difference.
I think we're like maybe 8 feet, so I think we're real safe.
Exactly. We're being extra cautious over here. And it's not just us. It's the players on the field. They're getting tested daily. We've seen walls being knocked out of the facility back over there. What are some of the changes that you may have picked up on since being here and watching this team on the field?
Well, they're wholesale changes. I mean, I've had 45 Augusts in my life where it was football, and this did not feel like football, and really until the last couple of days in phase 2 of the ramp-up period. So, all the social distancing, all the testing, all the plexiglass, just all the safety precautions, and rightly so in dealing with the pandemic. I think right now the league's doing a great job when you consider all the protocols being followed, the best medicine that these players have at their disposal. This probably is the safest place for them when you really consider, the general population and what's going on out there. But at the end of the day, I don't think we're really going to know how it's going to go until the travel starts. And week 2 at New York for this football team. And I think there's so much unknown out there. But I think the way they're doing it so far and the way that these first couple of phases have been in this ramp-up period and into real practice today, I think they've done it right. It feels right. It feels like football, but there's still a lot of unknowns out there.
A ton of unknowns, but I will say I think one of the perks, and we might not see it as a perk right now, but one of the perks of being a California team is, one, you've got the California weather, which today, it's scorching.
This is not California weather. It was 109 at my house yesterday.
It feels like we're in the Midwest right now. But with that being said, it's still a perk of the 49ers because some of those teams, you are every single day in that 109-degree weather, in that humidity, in that sticky weather. But also with that, the 49ers, if you can see it just behind us, you've got Levi's Stadium right behind us, where this team can utilize some of that space because you're no longer those days of being in an auditorium with about 90 guys. That's not happening these days anymore. These guys are being broken up. And prior to this weekend, you just talked about this ramp-up period. It was only the offense on the field at one time. It was only the defense. Now we're getting to see the entire team on the field together. But also, something special is happening today because the pads are on. So I'm going to ask you, as a former NFL defensive tackle, what happens when those pads go on?
Well, first, for the big guys, I know you got to get used to wearing all that extra weight, and it's not comfortable, and it is cumbersome. And you get out here and you're like, oh, man, my jersey's too tight, or maybe it's not tight enough and I'm going to get held today. Maybe I need to reduce my shoulder pad size. I didn't realize that, maybe my pants aren't fitting right. I mean, there's a lot of things when you put your pads on that you got to get the feel and you got to work your lather up. And that's what's going to be interesting to me, and the padded practices. And really, I mean, I know they're going to simulate game situations, Keiana, and they'll do some scrimmaging, but you really can't simulate real football in the regular season. And with no preseason, I feel bad for all these rookies. It's going to be a challenge to show what you can do as a practice player versus a veteran who's already got good stuff on game tape. So that's going to be the challenge for those guys. And then I think the biggest challenge of all, and I appreciate all the space and all the open area, and you're absolutely right on the protocol and how they're doing things right now. Playing in front of no fans is going to be a major challenge for these players. And I know as a player, I fed off the fan, both on the road and away. I mean, we get into it with road fans all the time, and it would inspire you to get that adrenaline going and it's just a shot of juice that you can't really create. So I know there's a lot of self-starters on this team. I know there's a lot of self-motivators. I think more than anything, these guys are going to have to rally around each other because when the crowd's not out there, and a lot of these guys, I mean, if they've experienced that, and the only thing I can remember was equating it to like a spring football scrimmage in college at USC when we'd go to the Coliseum. We'd go through a whole game day operation, and we'd have the inter-squad scrimmage. And, man, it always felt like the grass was a little longer. It felt like it was a little hotter. You felt heavier. Your legs you just didn't have that adrenaline that I think so many guys count on. And this year is going to be a major mental challenge for everybody, for you, for me, in particular, for these players, for all the writers, for everybody covering football, and really the players and the coaches. And for the players, this sport is so hard to play, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. And when you tie the pandemic to that and all the things these guys are dealing with, and we don't know what they're all dealing with in terms of their family and the family situation and the health of those folks, which is so important to these guys, to be able to block out those at times life and death distractions and come out here and basically, live on the apex like these guys have to do. It is going to be a season for the mentally tough. There is no question about it.
You brought up several topics I want to talk about, but I want to go ahead and let you guys get a good look at the field behind us. The guys have taken the field. Pads are on for the first time today. They had those ramp-up sessions between the last couple of days. Now things are getting real. The energy is a little heightened. DJ Jones said it best yesterday. If you're not excited to put pads on, what are you playing this game for? And these guys are definitely excited. But speaking of how these guys are feeling, I want to ask you, and I'm going to follow up with the story because I have something, but since you've been out here, I think you've been out here since Saturday like myself, have you sensed any added energy, any I want to say like the guys excited to be back on the field, especially going through this whole offseason where they didn't have an offseason program like normal.
Right. I do sense continuity. I don't think there's any question about it, and I think it's a credit to all these players that were away from here. I mean, they came back in fantastic condition, and that really is step one of pro football. A lot of people forget they're not robots out there. Their heart races too, and it'll get up to 170, 180 beats a minute. And that's the great equalizer is conditioning and what kind of gas tank these guys have. So I'm really impressed how they came back in shape, ready to go. And one thing that I noticed on Saturday in the first real day of the ramp-up is it almost looked like practice last year in terms of the tempo. And I know there were some different bodies and some different faces, but I sense continuity, and I'm really excited for some of these guys to be able to continue their career that were not part of it last year. Jerick McKinnon and what Jet's been through. And Jet's a proven very, very good player in this league, and he looks fantastic early in this camp. So fingers crossed for him. I'd say the same for Trent Taylor. I think he was the best receiver in camp last year before he went down with the foot injury, and we all know about those complications. I think he looks fantastic. The offensive line, we're going to lose the best left tackle ever to put on a 49er uniform, in my opinion, and Joe Staley. And we're not just going to miss him as a player. We're going to miss him as a person and as a leader and really what he is. So I hope he spends some time up here and is able to get around. But you replace him with a guy who's, I think he's been a Pro Bowler 7 of his 8 years, and I don't even count last year because he wasn't in uniform. He knows Kyle's system, played 4 years in it in Washington. He's picture perfect for it in terms of his size and movement skills and knowing the system. You got to be smart, be able to process information as an offensive lineman for a Kyle Shanahan offense. So I'm excited for those new faces on offense. And then defensively, I think the continuity is outstanding. You can see it in practice. Kaceric's going crazy down there with all the defensive linemen. He will get the most out of those guys. I think the linebacking core looks great. The secondary is going to look like it did last year, and I just hope a couple of guys take a few steps forward. But I expect this team to be able to hit the ground running. I mean, this was the best team in the National Football Conference last year, and I don't see anything that, if they execute and stay healthy, that's going to take away from that whatsoever here in 2020.
As a former NFL defensive tackle, you are the best person for me to ask this too. But so far through camp, we've been through 2 days. Today's day 3 for us. But what have been your early impressions of Javon Kinlaw? We haven't talked since the draft. I want to know, when you heard that the 49ers with the 14th overall pick select Javon, what were your thoughts?
Initially, my thoughts were in time, and I don't know how much time it's going to take. It could be an upgrade over DeForest Buckner, who is a great player. But when you talk about the finances of this league and Eric Armstead getting his deal, which he certainly deserved, and I'm glad Buck got his with Indianapolis, this cat, JK, as they call him out here, and Kaceric's yelling it all day long, get off, JK, get off. That guy, my first impression of him is he's like a redwood tree. I mean, I think if you were to cut him in half and count the rings, he might be 300. The guy is humongous.
DJ Jones said he's strong as an ox. That's how he described him.
And he's big from his toe to his head. I mean, he reminds me body type. And I always like to look at new guys and try to kind of, equate them to somebody I've seen before. And body type-wise, he looks like Marcus Stroud to me, maybe a little bit bigger. He was a first-round pick out of Georgia, went to Jacksonville, had a great career there. I think finished up in Buffalo, maybe somewhere else. But he used to be paired with a big old dude named John Henderson in Jacksonville. And those guys, it was a monster movie inside. As it was here last year with Buck and Eric when they're rushing the passer inside there. This guy is going to be a very, very good player. He is a human forklift. He's got nasty to him in terms of his attitude and how he plays. And I know Robert Saleh and Chris Kocurek will get the most out of him. Now, this is going to be different from him in terms of the up-tempo and the running. And I'm sure there's going to be some conditioning that will change between now and the opener. But when I heard that pick, the first thing I thought was the guy is massive. And why not just continue with the catalyst of this football team, which is the defensive line? I think you look around this league, and great quarterbacks run teams, and great defensive lines set the tempo for teams, and that happened all year here last year. So no surprise they're going back to the well again.
When you think about this offseason, rookies like Javon Kinlaw, Brandon Ayuk, some of the undrafted rookies, they didn't get that mini camp. They didn't get those OTAs. So they came to training camp. I mean, they had their Zoom meetings. Everything was done virtually. But they came to training camp, and it almost felt like it's day one for them because it's their first time taking the field. But with that being said, looking at Javon, he's still a rookie. He's going to develop. What's your prediction for this defensive line coming off of the year they had last year, sitting at the top of the league in a number of categories, and with the loss of DeForest Buckner? Do you feel like they can continue that production in 2020? I
do. I think Nick Bosa is going to be a year better. I mean, you watch Nick and how he prepares and what his skill sets are. He is literally the Wolverine. I mean, that guy. He never goes down. If he does get knocked down, he crawls to a gallop. Traditionally, a guy like me has got to stand up and then start moving again. He crawls to a gallop the way that he goes. So he's got a great temperament to be a defensive lineman. He's got all the desire that you look for, and he puts in the work. So he'll be better. D Ford, to me, looks like he was the guy in Kansas City a couple of years ago in terms of the get-off. I don't think the knee was ever right last year. So I think he's going to be better, and fingers crossed that he stays healthy. Eric Armstead, if he can just replicate what he did last year, he is an absolute wrecking crew on the inside. I think the wild cards are Solomon Thomas and what Solly can do as an inside pass rusher in particular. And then I think there's question marks on the depth in terms of the health of the depth. Julian Peterson with that ACL. Ronnie Blair coming back off an ACL. Ronnie's the smartest guy in the field when he's out there and can play anywhere. So excited for him. So, yeah, I expect this D-line – especially in year two with Kocurek and these guys, other than the new guys, understanding what he wants. And you could even include Kerry Hyder in that, who has a relationship in playing for Chris Kocurek, and he's got great versatility. So I think it's going to be just as lethal as it was last year. I think the younger guys are going to get better, and hopefully those wild cards come through, in particular Solomon Thomas.
So we are wrapping up the final. I guess we have about a minute left on the clock for today's live look, and we'll be back each day of practice starting around 10:20 in the morning. But one last thing for you. Over these last 2 days, give me a player. Who's impressed you between day 1 and 2?
Oh, man. Trent Taylor, I already mentioned, has been fantastic. Jerick McKinnon has been fantastic. But in terms of the young guys, I mean, we talked to Kinlaw. You just look at him and you're impressed, and looking at his body type. I've enjoyed watching Ayuk out here. And, again, trying to parallel him with another player. He looks like a bigger Devontae Adams to me. He's got some junk in his trunk. He's thicker on the lower end than you think. So there's something to him. He's a very savvy route runner. I saw him changing his speeds on one of his go routes yesterday. He went by Verrett on a go route for a deep shot for a touchdown. He's got long arms. Another guy that plays with the right attitude. So I'm expecting really big things out of him as his rookie year. Brandon
Ayuk had a big, I would say, last 2 days. I can't even call it just one day. Yesterday he had, I would say, like a 50-yard touchdown pass from Jimmy Garoppolo, already building that rapport with the 49ers
and
quarterback.
Last thing before we finish up is I want Jimmy, and it wasn't great on that big throw to Emmanuel Sanders in the Super Bowl, but at the end of the year, his deep ball was by far head and shoulders better than I'd ever seen it since he'd been here. So that one yesterday was an absolute dime to Ayuk. I want to see more of those.
We want to see lots more, and you can actually see lots more. Make sure you guys stay tuned to 49ers.com where we do have highlights from training camp practice. But with that, Tim and I have to sign off. Tim, it's not fair. I feel like I didn't have you for long enough. But
Well, we'll do it again.
Well, you heard it here. Tim will be back. We will do this again, but we will see you tomorrow at 10:15 a.m. for another 49ers Live Look-In. Thanks for tuning in.